Hello. Hi guys. Good morning. Is everyone ready? Shall we start? Guys?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Okay. Fine. So we have been seeing periodic table, isn't it? Right. So last class we saw how atomic size is varying. Right. So we saw about cationic size, anionic size. Right. Okay. So uh, Surya, Surya, are you there?
Yes, sir.
Can you tell me? Can you comment on the cationic size and the atomic size when I have Na plus or Na, which will have more size?
Cationic size, sir,
Means cationic size is
has more.
larger than the atomic size.
No, sir.
How is it there?
Cationic size will always be lesser than atomic size.
Okay, why is it like that?
Because here it gives one electron. It gives out one electron, sir. So
Okay,
the size also decreases.
why size decreases? Like basically when the number of electron is lost, why is size decreasing?
Because nuclear force of attraction increases, sir.
Exactly, correct. So basically I have to talk about the nuclear charge, right? So when the atom loses electron to form the octet configuration, right? So you see that the nuclear force of attraction increases, so that the atomic size decreases. And same goes with your anions also. So anions, how is it?
Anionic size is always greater than atomic size.
Cool, right? So the same reason, right? So the anionic size is always going to be greater than the atomic size. So Cl minus will have higher size than Cl, chlorine atom, as such, right? So these are the things which you saw last class, isn't it? Okay, so we'll move on, right? We'll move on to certain other atomic trends. So the next one. So we saw atomic size, we saw nuclear charge, that is nuclear force of attraction, and now we'll see electropositivity. Right. So electropositivity can also be called as metallic character, right? Fine. Now we'll look into it, what exactly this is. So first you have to understand what is electropositivity, right? So we'll take down the definition, right? So electropositivity, okay, first we'll tell you what is this. So again, you can tell electropositivity. So that means the atoms are going to form positive ions, right? The atoms are going to form positive ions, correct? Okay. So how will I tell that? So I can say it like this. It is the ability of the element. So take down the definition for electropositivity. It is the ability of the element. It is the ability of the element to form. It is the ability of the element to form a positive charge by, or it is the ability of the element to form a cation. That's a better word, right? It is the ability of the element to form a cation by losing electrons, right? Electropositivity, it is the ability of the element to form a cation by losing electrons, right? So how much ability it has to form a positive charge, or how easy it is. I can remove the electron, that much will be the electropositivity. And why do I call it as metallic character? Because metals only will generally form cations, and non-metals will form anions. isn't it? Sodium will always form positive charge only, magnesium will always form positive charges. But if I go for non-metals like oxygen, nitrogen, chlorine, and all these are non-metals, they'll always form negative charges, right? Okay. So if I speak in terms of this, right? Actually, what you're going to see happening is when I go along down the group, right? When I go down the group, right? The electropositivity or metallic character increases. Why? Now it is all about ability of the element to lose electrons, isn't it? So I would say this electropositivity is inversely related, or I would say it is directly related to the easiness of removing electron, isn't it? Right? So the electropositivity, how much easy it is for me to remove the electron from the valence shell, that much will be the electropositivity, isn't it? So when I go down the group, say when I go sodium, lithium, and potassium, right? I know that the size is keeping on increasing, isn't it? When I go down the group, size is increasing, correct? Right? So now what is going to happen? Now removing an electron from potassium is little easier than removing an electron from sodium, isn't it? Same way when I compare lithium and sodium, removing an electron from sodium is easier than removing an electron from lithium, isn't it? So obviously that's what I'm saying. When I go down the group, right? When I go down the group, the electropositivity increases. That is, or the metallic character increases, right? Okay. Now when I go along the period, from left to right of the period, if I go, so what is happening to the size? Size is decreasing, isn't it? Size is decreasing. So I'll have high nuclear force of attraction. So removing an electron from that particular small or atomics, small or atoms will always be difficult. Rather than removing an electron from a big atom, it is very easy. But the same electron which has to be removed from a very small atom is very, very difficult, right? That's why we see when I go along the period, it decreases, right? When I go along the period, it decreases, right? Okay. Actually, I'll be able to club this electropositivity metallic character with one more thing, right? So what kind of process you're seeing here? So basically, you are seeing Li is forming Li plus by removing an electron. Same way for sodium, everything is going to remove the electron. I'm talking about the electropositivity here, isn't it? Right? So whenever a substance loses electron, whenever an atom or any compound loses electron, what is it called as in terms of oxidation reduction? Guys, how will you define oxidation in terms of electron, oxidation and reduction in terms of electrons? Do you know? Generally, what is oxidation? Tell me what are all the definitions you know about oxidation and reduction?
Like removing hydrogen.
Okay, removing hydrogen. Okay, that is
Gain of electrons, right?
okay, fine. So you have to know the definitions first. Please understand. For oxidation, right? For oxidation, it is always addition of oxygen, right? I can add oxygen to that particular substance, it gets oxidized, right? And or it can be removal of hydrogen, right? Or I can remove hydrogen from the particular substance, it becomes oxidized again, right? Or if I talk in terms of electrons, it is going to be removal or loss of electron, I could say, right? So all these things, these three things talks about oxidation: addition of oxygen, removal of hydrogen, or it is loss of electron. Whenever the substance loses electron, it is going to be called as oxidation. You have to remember this, guys, right? Okay, so whenever I go for reduction, it is going to be exactly opposite. So reduction, if I take, it is removal of oxygen, right? Addition of hydrogen, or it is going to be gain of electrons, right? It is going to be gain of electron. So remember, oxidation is loss of electron, reduction is gain of electron, right? So can you tell me what is happening here? Li is losing electron to form Li plus. So what process is this?
Oxidation.
Oxidation, right? You're saying that loss of oxidation is basically, loss of electron is oxidation, right? So that's what is happening here in electropositivity or metallic character. correct? So obviously you see that Li is losing electron to form Li plus. So lithium is actually getting oxidized, right? So please understand all these elements which are having high metallic character, right? All these elements which have high metallic character will have high ability to get oxidized, right? Will have high ability to get oxidation, because how do I define oxidation? Oxidation is the process where I remove electron from the substance, and that is what I'm speaking about here. To form the positive charge, I need to remove the electron, right? And the same thing is what is in case of my oxidation also, right? So I will be able to club two more properties with this electropositivity, right? So that is ability to get oxidized. Obviously that is what I'm saying here, because I have to lose electron, right? Okay, so what are oxidizing and reducing agents, guys? We know oxidation and reduction. We learned about what is the process of oxidation and reduction. There are something called as oxidizing and reducing agents. What are they?
They add hydrogen or remove oxygen.
Sorry, they are?
Sir, oxidizing agents, they add oxygen and remove hydrogen.
Okay, okay. It's almost correct. Fine. So like this is how I put it. Okay. So basically any agent, right? Not necessarily, we don't have to talk about oxidizing agents as such. Say any agent for that matter, say LIC agent. What does a LIC agent help you? Does do, right? He helps you get an LIC policy. Correct. Say if I have you know about pollination, right? Pollination in plants, right? And we have something called as pollinating agents, right? Wind is a pollinating agent. Your insects are pollinating agents, right? So what do these pollinating agents help in? They help in pollination, right? Same way, oxidizing and reducing agents also are going to help in oxidizing and oxidation and reduction, right? Now the question is how they are going to do it, right? If I'm going to call something as an oxidizing agent, so obviously I understand that that particular oxidizing agent is going to help in oxidation. That means it is going to oxidize something else. That is what you need to understand, right? Oxidizing agent oxidizes something else. Say, for example, I have something called as potassium permanganate, right? Potassium permanganate is KMnO4. You would have even seen it. Maybe you must have seen it in your labs, maybe, right? It will be purple in color. I'm sorry, right? So this KMnO4 would have been purple in color. So this is one of the very strong oxidizing agents, right? It's one of the very strong oxidizing agents. So basically, if some other substance is there in the reactant, this is reacting with something else, right? So that something else will get oxidized in the product, right? That something else will get oxidized in the product. For example, say KMnO4, I put Fe2 plus ion. Fe2 plus in the sense some compound which contains Fe2 plus, right? So now it is going to get oxidized. How? So this Fe2 plus will actually become Fe3 plus. What is happening here? Fe2 plus has lost an electron to form Fe3 plus. I told you loss of electron is oxidation, correct? So what you're seeing here is this particular thing is the oxidizing agent which helps in oxidation of Fe2 plus to become Fe3 plus. Okay. Now the question is how it does this, right? How an oxidizing agent helps in oxidation, right? So the answer to that question would be it is actually going to be a sacrificial oxidation. That means that oxidizing agent is going to sacrifice itself, right, in order for the other compound to get oxidized. What do you mean by sacrificial? Now it is going to undergo the opposite process of what is it doing, right? Basically, an oxidizing agent oxidizes something else by undergoing reduction by itself. Please understand this, right? An oxidizing agent oxidizes something else by reducing itself. That's what I told you. It's going to be a sacrificial oxidation or sacrificial reduction, right? So KMnO4 will oxidize Fe2 plus to become Fe3 plus. So definitely KMnO4 has to get reduced, right? So in a reaction, right, if at all you have a reaction where both oxidation and reduction is happening, right? So the one which is getting oxidized is the reducing agent. Same way, the one which is reduced is the oxidizing agent. Are you able to understand, guys? Whichever is getting oxidized is the reducing agent. Whichever is getting reduced is the oxidizing agent. Okay, so here KMnO4 is the oxidizing agent. It will oxidize Fe2 plus to Fe3 plus, but KMnO4 would have gotten reduced. Right. So obviously it would have formed some compounds, but we'll not see it now. We will see it and we'll take it up in the redox reactions chapter. For now, it's not required. Right. So please understand that KMnO4 is the oxidizing agent. It oxidizes Fe2 plus to Fe3 plus, and KMnO4 will get reduced. Right. Okay. So why we saw all this is for this electropositivity. Right. So in electropositivity, we say that the element has to lose electron. That is, the element has to get oxidized for it to form a cation. Right. So now that's what we said, the ability to get oxidized. Right. So if it is undergoing oxidation, what kind of agent it would be?
Reducing agent.
Reducing agent.
Very good. Right. So I will even say that it is electropositivity can also be gone into the reducing power of that particular element, or ability for that element to act as a reducing agent. Right. So whichever is getting oxidized is the reducing agent, whichever is getting reduced is the oxidizing agent. So you see, ability to get oxidized, or I can speak in terms of the reducing power, which can act as better reducing agent. Say the questions can be like this. Say I have sodium, magnesium, potassium, boron. I have all these four things. Right, I have all these four things. Right, I'm asking you to arrange them in the order of reducing power. Right, arrange them in the order of reducing power. If I ask you, right, so what they're asking, basically reducing power in the sense they have to be reducing agents, and for them to be reducing agents they have to undergo oxidation, and if they undergo oxidation, that means they have to lose electrons, and if they lose electrons, they'll become electropositive. So all these things are very much connected here, you can see. So that's why I clubbed all these four together: electropositivity, metallic character, ability to get oxidized, all the reducing power. All of them are going to increase down the group and decrease along the period. Say, please do not mug up what is happening down the group and along the period for every periodic trend. Have a logical explanation. Right? Have a logical explanation. That is what is more important. Okay, fine. Right. So now can you tell me which will have the maximum reducing power among these four? Guys, which
Potassium.
of these four?
Potassium.
Correct. Very good. So potassium will have the maximum reducing power. Now you can understand how is it. So I have lithium, sodium, potassium, right? And after this I have beryllium, magnesium, and I have a gap, and I have boron. These are the elements I have here. Like out of these six, some four are there, right? So obviously when I go down the group, what happens to the metallic character? Metallic character or reducing nature increases. So definitely potassium among this, and along the group, if I go, it is going to get decreased, right? So definitely potassium is going to have the maximum metallic character, or it is going to have the maximum reducing power, right? Okay, then what after potassium?
Sodium.
Sodium.
Good. Sodium. Okay, after sodium?
Magnesium.
Magnesium.
Very good. And lastly, obviously boron, because boron is at the last.
Alright.
Right? So everybody understood how metallic character and reducing power works, right? Okay, fine. Now we spoke about this. We'll speak about the energy values in terms of this. Can you guess what is the next atomic trend?
Ionization energy.
Wow. Yes. Correct. Absolutely right. Right. So everybody understood. Oh, sorry. Right. So everybody understood this, right? So we'll speak about the same thing in terms of some energy value, right? That is, okay, we'll see that. Okay, I hope everybody understood.
What is the new topic, sir?
Coming. So the next trend is ionization energy, or ionization enthalpy. It is also called like that, right? Okay, so we already spoke about it a long while, like long time back, right? In your atomic structure we have spoken. Right? At that time, I told you there are going to be two types of Einstein energies. One with respect to the Bohr's model, right? And the other one we actually use in reality nowadays, right? And the one which we use in reality nowadays only we are going to see, right? Okay, so we already know the definition, but still we'll take down the definition. Please take down the definition for Einstein energy, guys. Please take down the definition.
Sir, in school they taught us enthalpy, sir.
Einstein energy. Now, why am I not talking about enthalpies? Because you'll be studying. You don't know thermodynamics yet. That's going to be a chapter which is going to be coming, right? So enthalpy, energy, all these are same for now, right? You don't have to worry about it. You will get a very good picture of what exactly this enthalpy is, all these things when I go for thermodynamics. So I don't have to worry much. Okay, fine. So take down the definitions. It is the energy required. It is the energy required to take out one electron. It is the energy required to take out one electron from the valence shell. It is the energy required to take out one electron from the valence shell of an atom. Right? It is the energy required to take out one electron from the valence shell of an atom. Right? So that's what is ionization energy. Right? Okay. Fine. So in electropositivity, we spoke about the ability of the element to lose electron, isn't it? So to form a cation, right? So it's not like out of nowhere the element will lose its electron, right? Because the electron is very strongly bound by the nucleus. It is very strongly attracted by the nucleus. So like if at all you are not going to do anything, right? If at all you are not going to do anything, the electron will stay as such inside the atom only, right? So if at all you want the electron to come out, right? If at all you want the electron to come out, you have to supply some energy, right? You have to supply some energy to overcome the force of attraction between the electron and the nucleus, isn't it? So you have to supply some energy. So that energy which you are supplying for taking out this one, see, remember, one ionization enthalpy, only one electron. If I supply one ionization enthalpy, only one electron can be removed. If at all you want to go for the second electron, that is going to be called as second ionization enthalpy. Anyways, we'll see about it later. Okay. So the thing is, for you to overcome the force of attraction between the electron and the nucleus, you have to supply energy, and that energy is what is called as my ionization enthalpy. Right? Okay. So please understand, we are not going to speak. For example, if the element forms a monopositive cation, that is only plus one charge, like sodium forms sodium plus. I remove only one electron. Right? Now there is no question of first ionization enthalpy, second ionization enthalpy, and so on and so forth. But if at all I go for a metal like magnesium or aluminium, right? So there, the magnesium forms Mg2 plus. Aluminium forms aluminium 3 plus. So basically in Mg I have to remove 2 electrons, right? So I cannot speak about the ionization enthalpy as a whole. I have to, so what I'm trying to tell you is, if I speak about ionization enthalpy, it is always going to be only about one electron removal, right? At a time, I can remove only one electron. If at all you have to remove the second electron, you have to supply little more energy. That's what you'll understand. Like, okay, anyways, we'll see about this. Okay. So we are speaking about sodium losing Na, sodium losing electron to form Na plus, right? So for this, the energy required is what is called as my ionization energy, right? Fine. So for ionization energy, which are all the factors which you have to look at, right? Which are all the factors which you have to look at, right? So the factors which you will use for deciding the ionization energy. So the first one, please understand, ionization energy is inversely related to the size of the atom, right? The ionization energy is inversely related to the size of the atom. Now, before we see this, or I would say the first step, we'll not take it as size, we'll actually take it as ionization energy is inversely proportional to the electropositivity right? Ionization energy is inversely related to the electropositivity. What is electropositivity? It is the ability of the element to lose electron. So if it's very easy for the element to lose electron, that means what? I have to supply very less amount of energy in removing the electron. So if at all the element has very high electropositivity, that means what? Electron can be easily removed from the nucleus. Electron can be easily removed from the atom, right? That means how much energy I have to supply? I have to supply only very little amount of energy for the electron to come out, right? So that is the first thing which you have to see. Okay, and we already know how electropositivity is varying down the group along the period. So down the group it increases, and along the period it decreases, right? So anyways, so we'll see more and more things. So next factor which is going to affect my ionization enthalpy, right? So my ionization enthalpy is obviously inversely related to the size. Is it not? We already gave this analogy for your electropositivity. If I have a very small atom, right? So the electron and the nucleus, the valence electron and the nucleus will have very strong force of attraction, isn't it? So for there, if you have to remove electron, you have to supply a lot of energy for that electron to come out, right? But if I have a very big atom, right? So there the nuclear force of attraction between the electron and the nucleus is very less, right? So I have to supply only little energy for the electron to come out, right? Okay, so that's about the size, right? Third thing which you have to look at is the electronic configuration. We have to look at electronic configuration, right? So what do you mean by electronic configuration? You have to especially look for half-filled or fully filled orbitals. We already know half-filled and fully filled stability is there, right? So whenever I have P3 or D5, something like that, I say that it is going to be half-filled configuration, right? So whenever you have half-filled configuration, I told you that atom is going to be little stable, isn't it? So please understand, whenever you have half-filled stability, it is little difficult for us to remove the electron. It is very difficult for us to remove the electron, right? Because it is having half-filled stability, and obviously fully filled stability is still more stable than half-filled stable, right? At that time, removing an electron, I have to supply still more energy for me to take out the electron, right? So whenever you have half-filled or fully filled stability, I have to supply more ionization enthalpy. I have to supply more energy for the electron to come out, right? So these three things you have to remember, guys. There is no other way, right? So it's very logical also, right? It's all about removing an electron. So which and all are the conditions which will favor easy removal of electron? And whenever easy removal of electron is there, that means I'm going to supply less energy for the electron to be taken out, right? Obviously, highly electropositive elements will have very less ionization enthalpy, and a smaller atom will have very high ionization enthalpy. And when I have half-filled or fully filled configuration of the atom, again, that is going to affect, and I have to supply more energy for the electron to come out, because half-filled or fully filled orbitals will give me stability, right? Okay, now we'll take some examples, right? And yeah, before this, we'll speak about this first, second, and third ionization enthalpies. So like for sodium, as I told you, sodium is having only one valence electron, so it will be removed. So the total energy here is ionization enthalpy. There is no question of first or second or third ionization enthalpies, right? But if I go for magnesium, right? So magnesium has two valence electrons, right? So first, Mg has to form Mg plus, isn't it? First, Mg has to form Mg plus. So here in this case, I removed an electron, right? So I'm going to say that the energy which is supplied here is going to be called as the first ionization energy for magnesium, right? It is going to be called as first ionization energy for magnesium. Okay, fine. Next, this Mg2 plus, sorry, Mg plus has to form Mg2 plus by losing another electron, right? This Mg plus has to form Mg2 plus by losing another electron. So here in this case, it is going to be second ionization enthalpy or second ionization energy, right? I already told you, one ionization energy means only one electron has to be removed, right? So here there are two electrons has to be removed. So there's going to be first ionization energy for Mg to form Mg plus, and from Mg plus to Mg2 plus, I have to supply the second ionization energy. Okay. Now the question is, out of these two, which is going to be higher? Right? Which is going to be higher? First ionization energy. Okay. Obviously, the total ionization energy of magnesium will be equal to the first ionization energy plus the second ionization energy. That is understood. Right? The total ionization energy of magnesium to Mg2 plus will always be equal to the first ionization energy plus the second ionization energy. That is understood. So what I'm asking is, which do you think will have higher energy? First
Second.
or second? Yes, it should be second, right? Yeah, correct. So we'll see how it goes, right? We'll see actually how it goes. Fine. So this we understood. So I told you, you have to look at the electronic configuration, the size, and all those stuff, right? So when I go for Mg plus and Mg2 plus. Okay, fine. Now Mg plus will have 1s2, 2s2, 2p, it's 12, 2p6, 3s1. This is what I'll have, right? So Mg, basically it would have been 3s2 for magnesium. For magnesium, it would have been 3s2, the valence electronic configuration, right? Now I have removed one electron to form Mg plus, so it would have had 3s1, right? Okay. Now if I go for Mg2, okay, Mg2 plus is not required. Okay. Now Mg2, okay, first. When I compare Mg plus and Mg size, which is having more size, which is having lesser size?
Mg plus has more size.
Oi. Cation
Mg has more.
Mg has more size.
Correct. Mg has more size. I always told you, whenever you have cations and atoms, the atoms will always have more size than the cations.
You only asked whether Mg plus or Mg2 plus, sir.
I asked Mg or Mg plus. That's what I asked.
You didn't know that. I got last question, sir.
No problem, no problem. So obviously I know that size Mg is having more size, right? Fine. So please tell me, where do I have to supply more energy now? Which is larger? Mg is larger in size. So there, can I say I have to supply lesser energy? I told you, when you look at the factors for ionization energy, what I told you, electropositivity is one factor, which is basically what is that? Inversely related, right? And I talked about the size, right? Size again is inversely related, right? Now, so what I see, Mg plus is smaller, Mg is a little bigger. So obviously, the amount of energy spent in Mg will actually be lesser because the atom is little big, right? The amount of energy spent is little lesser than in the case of Mg plus, right? So not only in this case, please understand this, right? The first ionization energy will always be lesser than the second ionization energy, which will always be lesser than the third IE, so on and so forth. Not always, this is general case. There can be a problem, like if you just blindly follow this, right? It's always better to look at the electronic configuration. So this will only change, right? This particular thing, that is the first ionization energy will always be lesser than second, which will always be lesser than third. This will happen 95% of cases, right? The only case which this will not work is when you have half-filled configurations, right? When you have half-filled configuration. So we'll take an okay. So till now, any doubts, guys? Right? So till like generally speaking, you can actually fix this in your mind. And first ionization energy will always be lesser than the second, will always be lesser than the third. That is understood, right? Okay. Now I speak like this. Okay. Let me take an example like this. I have. Okay, I'll speak about second ionization energy of sodium, magnesium, and aluminium. I want you to arrange them. I want you to arrange the sodium, magnesium, and aluminium in the order of their second ionization energy. Not normal ionization energy. I'm speaking about second ionization energy, right? So what do you mean by second? For after first ionization energy itself, all of them would have formed monopositive cations, right? After the first ionization energy itself, right? All of them would have formed monopositive cations. So I would say after the first IE, all would have formed Na plus, Mg plus, Al plus, right? Now from this I have to remove electron again. That's what we're talking about, the second ionization energy, right? From these species, right? From these species, I have to remove the electron, right? Okay. Now let me look at the configuration here. So your sodium would have had 1s2, 2s2, 2p6. Magnesium would have had 3s1, right? And your aluminium would have had 3s2. Okay, right. Okay, now tell me, among this, oh wait, it is 3s1 again, correct? Basically aluminium would have had 3s2, 3p1, so I have removed, like, oh, that's 3s2, correct? Okay, right. So this would have been the configurations. Now tell me, look at it and tell me which will have the maximum value. Out of these three, which will have a maximum value of second ionization energy?
Sodium.
Sorry?
Sodium.
Exactly, because sodium has attained fully filled configuration, isn't it? Sodium has attained fully filled configuration, guys. Look at this, right? So obviously sodium will have the maximum value, because if from removal of electron from Na, see, removal of electron from sodium to form sodium plus is very, very easy, right? But removal of electron from Na plus to form Na2 plus is absolutely very, very, very difficult, because sodium plus has already attained octet configuration. It is already stable. It has already had a fully filled configuration. So definitely removing an electron from Na plus will always be very, very difficult, and that will have the maximum ionization energy. Okay. Now compared to these two, what will happen? Now what you have to look at? There is no fully filled stability. There is no half filled stability. So what is the thing which you have to look at then?
Atomic size.
Size. Very good. Okay. So what do you think? Which will have greater size, aluminium or magnesium?
Aluminium.
Aluminium.
Aluminium will have lesser size or greater size. Now,
Lesser size.
like, you just have to remember what happens along the period and what happens down the group. What is happening? Along the period, size decreases. Down the group, size increases. Correct? So obviously, aluminium comes after magnesium in the same period. So definitely, aluminium should have had a lesser size than magnesium. So where should I supply more energy?
Aluminium.
Aluminium.
Right? Because aluminium is smaller in size, magnesium is little bigger in size, right? So definitely aluminium plus, I have to supply a lot of energy than Mg plus. Everybody understood what is happening here,
Sir,
right? Everybody understood?
Sir.
Yes, Abhishek.
sir, that definition for ionization energy, sir. Can you say it again, sir?
You want the definition for ionization energy?
Sir.
Okay, take down. It is the amount of energy required. It is the amount of energy required to take out one electron from the valence shell of an atom. To take out one electron from the valence shell of an atom. Right? Okay, so we'll take one more example for this. Okay, say I have carbon, nitrogen, oxygen, fluorine. Okay, I have carbon, nitrogen, oxygen, fluorine. So if I just ask you, arrange them in the order of first ionization energy. Right, arrange them in the order of first ionization energy. What do you think will be the answer? So which do you think will have?
Fluorine,
Wait, wait. So,
FNO, sir. Carbon, fluorine, nitrogen, oxygen, sir.
carbon, nitrogen, fluorine.
No,
No,
sir.
first. No, wait. So the thing is, which is going to have maximum ionization energy? Tell me.
Oxygen.
Sorry.
Fluorine.
Oxygen.
Fluorine.
Fluorine, sir.
C for
Fluorine.
carbon, no, sir. C for carbon, no, sir.
T for carbon. Yes. Right. So okay. So I got so many votes. Fine. Let me ask one by one. Bhavadarini, what do you think? Which do you think is going to have maximum ionization energy among these four?
Fluorine, sir.
Fluorine. Okay. Why do you say so?
Because fluorine's size is very less compared to the other three.
Okay, I understand. A logical answer. Okay, fine. Does anybody have a different opinion than Bhavadarini?
Sir, oxygen, sir.
Okay, why oxygen?
Sir, because it is only the maximum, sir. Because for example, if you see carbon means 6, sir. So 6 minus 1, 5. For fluorine, it's 10, I think.
Oh, so it is not about the atomic number. It is about the valence electronic configuration. Carbon is 6, I understand. But how many electrons are there in the valence shell?
3. No, sir. After in the first ionization energy.
After the first ionization energy? Okay, fine. 3. Right. Okay. So we're not talking about the after the first ionization energy. We're talking about the first ionization energy. Right. So fluorine's answer I can understand. Why is it why are you telling it? Because among this, fluorine is the smallest. Okay, that I understand. Okay, fine. Any other counters for Bhavadarini?
Sir, why fluorine is the smallest, sir?
Along the period, what happens?
Decrease.
Size? That's it. So fluorine is the last 17th group. So that is why it's smallest. Correct. Abhishek only asked, right?
No, sir. Mithun, sir.
So
Mithun.
second ionization energy is greater than first, sir.
Okay.
Maybe we can tell oxygen also, no, sir.
No, that's what. We don't have to go for the second ionization energy now. We are just stopping with all of them forming monopositive ions. That's where we're going to stop. Right? After that, we'll see. Second ionization, again, I'll ask after this. Okay. Fine. So no other counters for Bhavadarini. I would say oxygen was the counter, but I would say there is no logical explanation for this. But fluorine, yes, logical explanation is there. Any other thing? Any other answers which I can expect? Okay. I will tell the answer. Will you come up with the reason? Right. So among this, nitrogen is the one which is having maximum ionization energy. Why?
Half-filled stability.
Oh yeah, wonderful. Yes, it is
Sir,
because
it has
of
more than fluorine also, sir.
yes, more than fluorine also. Ionization energy alone. Right? So nitrogen, it's very, very difficult for nitrogen to have a positive, to form a positive charge because it is half-filled stable. Right? Okay. So obviously nitrogen, it is having 2p3 configuration, right? So it is half-filled stable. So that has to be given the first priority now, right? So among carbon, nitrogen, oxygen, fluorine, nitrogen is the one which is going to have highest ionization energy, and then comes fluorine, then comes oxygen, and then comes carbon. Right? These three is for size, obviously, because there is no other thing which you can look at. But that nitrogen, it is the one half-filled stable. That's why nitrogen comes at the first. Okay, right? Fine. Let me speak about the second ionization energy. Can you arrange them and tell me what will be the order of second ionization energy for all of these?
Oxygen, fluorine, nitrogen, carbon.
Okay, I think it should be correct, right? So we have to look at carbon plus. So we have to basically look at carbon plus, nitrogen plus, oxygen plus, and fluorine plus. That is after the first ionization energy, they would have formed these cations, right? So carbon would have had 2p2, nitrogen would have had 2p1. Am I right? 2s2, 2p2. Oh, it's 2p1 for this thing. It's 2p2, 2p3, and 2p4. Yes? This would have been the configuration for all these cations. Correct? Fine. Now again, I have to go for half-filled stability first. So obviously, actually, which is having the maximum, which is having half-filled. O plus is actually having this thing. So O plus will have maximum energy. Then I have to go for size. There is no other go. So obviously, fluorine will have the least size. Then comes nitrogen. Then comes carbon. Yes, this would have been the answer. Right, guys? Everybody understood what is happening here in case of ionization energy, right? The first priority has to be given to the half-filled or fully filled stability, right? Then the next priority, but then the next priority has to be given to the size. Okay, but if it's like this, say for example, I have say I have chlorine, right? And I have chlorine and phosphorus, not chlorine and phosphorus. I will put fluorine and phosphorus. Right, now I'll have fluorine and phosphorus. Right, now I have to understand which is having higher ionization energy. Okay, among fluorine and phosphorus, which is having higher ionization energy. What do you think? Right, among phosphorus and fluorine. Okay, I'll write it here. Among phosphorus and fluorine, right? Which do you think is going to have more ionization energy? Phosphorus comes in which family? Which group? Phosphorus comes in which group? Nobody knows where phosphorus comes.
Group 15, sir.
Thank you. So it basically belongs to nitrogen family. After nitrogen, phosphorus. Guys, I told you each and every group at least 3 elements. Group 1, group 2, group 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18. All these groups you should know at least 3 elements. If you don't know, you will not be able to answer easy questions like this. Right? So just because you don't know where phosphorus is present, and just because of that you don't know what is the configuration, electronic configuration, and just because of that you'll not be able to answer this question. Do you really want that? Right? So please make sure that in each and every group, group 1, group 2, leave the group 3 to group 12. Leave that. That is not required. Right? But group 1, group 2, then group 13 to 18. At least for those groups, you have to know the first 3 elements. If not, it is going to be very, very difficult. Okay, fine. So I have nitrogen and then phosphorus, right? So now please look at this. This is now nitrogen will have 2p3, right? So definitely phosphorus would have had 3p3. I told you how the electronic configuration varies down the group, right? So now it is going to be 3p3, and fluorine is again going to have 2p6. That is understood. Sorry, 2p5. Okay, now tell me which is going to have more ionization energy.
Phosphorus, sir.
Okay, that confusion comes, isn't it? Right. So now which should I choose? Right. Now the thing is, phosphorus is having half-filled configuration, right? But phosphorus is having a higher size than fluorine. Right? Now please go for it. Please understand this. Now you have to check, you checked here for half-filled stability because all the electrons are there in 2p only. Like all of them are containing their valence shell in 2p only. Right? So at that time, the half-filled stability will be more dominating than the size effect. Right? But here we are not talking about the same shells. It is 2p, here it is 3p. So we cannot compare the half-filled stability here. You can blindly say fluorine is the one which will have higher ionization energy because it is having very small size when compared to 3p. 3p is lit in a one more shell higher. Right? So please take a note of this. Half-filled stability will come into the picture when the electrons are there in the same shell for the elements to be compared. Right? If you can look at this, you can see that all the valence electron are there in the same shell, 2p, right? But here you cannot compare, because here the electrons are there in 2p for fluorine, and here it is there for 3p in fluorine. At that time, I will not be able to tell, right? But the same question I ask you, I have phosphorus and sulfur. Phosphorus and sulfur. Which do you think will have more ionization energy? Sulfur belongs to first. Sulfur belongs to which family? Sulfur belongs to which family? I didn't hear you.
Oxygen family.
Yes. Sulfur belongs to oxygen family, right? So oxygen is having 2p4. So sulfur will have 3p4. Then this will have 3p3. That we already saw. Right now, even though sulfur is having lesser size, right? Now sulfur will have lesser size because it comes after phosphorus in the period, right? So size of sulfur is little lesser. So obviously, what I expect sulfur to have higher ionization energy, right? But since because of this, that is, it is having half-filled stability, phosphorus now will have higher ionization energy compared to sulfur, right? Now do you understand why am I comparing? It's because both the electrons are there in 3p orbitals, right? But here for fluorine it is in 2p and for phosphorus it is in 3p. So that way we'll not be able to compare the half-filled stability. We have to go only for size, right? But if in this case you look at this, both the electrons are there in 2p only, then I have to go for half-filled stability. Did you understand, guys, what I'm trying to tell?
Understood, sir.
Right? I hope everybody understood, right? Okay, so that is about ionization energies. First ionization, we'll do more problems on this very quickly, right? Okay, we can take a or anything else I have to say. Okay, like this kind of questions can also be asked in ionization energies. Okay. Right. Say they will give the data like this. Okay. Say the first ionization energy of an element is some 100 joules. Right. The second ionization energy is some 600 joules, and the third ionization energy is some 700 joules. Okay. Now they will ask, what is the number of valence electrons? Right? What is the number of valence? Say this belongs to a metal M, right? This belongs to a element M. So we'll keep it like that, right? So they're asking how many valence electrons are there in M. The question is how many valence electrons? Can you answer this question?
3, sir.
3. Just because I gave you first, second, and third ionization enthalpies.
Not sure, sir.
Now look at this. Look at the values here. Like you cannot say just because 3 ionization enthalpies are given, 3 valence electrons are there. We cannot tell like that. You have to look at the values. Okay. Now if you look at the value for first ionization energy, it is 100 joules, right? But look at the second ionization energy value. It is 600 joules. I'm going 6 times the value. And again, look at the third ionization energy. That is again coming back to like very less increase. Only 100 is the increase. Here 500 is the increase. For these two, only 100 is the increase, right? So what do you understand from this? It is understood that after the removal of first electron, removal of second electron is very, very, very difficult. That is what I understand, right? So after the removal of first electron, I supplied very less amount of energy, right? For the second electron to be removed, I have to supply a very, very large amount of energy compared to the first one, right? So what do I understand from this? I understood that after the removal of first electron itself, right? After the removal of first electron itself, that particular element M has attained stable configuration, stable electronic configuration. And that is why removal of the second electron, right? Removal of the second electron becomes very, very, very difficult. Again, I repeat, for the first electron, it is only 100 joules, right? For the second electron, I see that there's a huge jump. between the first and the second, right? So what do we understand from this? After removal of the first electron, right? After removal of the first electron, this element should have got a stable electronic configuration, that most probably a fully filled configuration. Correct. That is why removing an electron from fully filled configuration is going to be very, very difficult, and that's what I see here. So what is the number of valence electrons now?
1, sir.
1 electron. Very simple. There should be. So for example, for sodium, right? So I have 1s2, 2s2, 2p6, 3s1, right? So now if I remove this electron, what happens? Now this is the first ionization energy. It's very easy for me to remove, right? But what do you see here now? After removal of 1 electron, I have attained noble gas configuration, that is fully filled configuration, right? So definitely removing an electron from this will be very, very, very tough. That's why you see there is a huge jump, right? But if it is like, you can ask me, sir, I can have Mg plus and Mg2 plus. Again, say you can say that if I go for magnesium, 1 second. So if I go for magnesium, that is also having two valence electrons, correct? So if you go for magnesium, the first ionization enthalpy, say assuming, I'm just giving random values, it is not the exact values, say it is some 150 joules, assuming, right? Now second ionization enthalpy would be some 300 joules, right? But if you go for the third ionization energy, now that will be around 1500. What do you see again? Mg plus, right? After the first ionization energy, it forms Mg plus. After the second ionization energy, I form Mg2 plus. Now after Mg2 plus, what will happen? Again, noble gas configuration will come. That is 1s2, 2s2, 2p6 would have come for Mg, right? Again, you see how, look at the jump. 150 to 300, little small jump, right? But look at this, 300 to 1500. There is a huge jump. What do you mean by that? That means removal of 2 electrons is easy, but removal of third electron is very, very, very difficult. That is indicating the thing that Mg, that is this particular element, has attained noble gas configuration after removing 2 electrons. Right? After removal of 2 electrons, this Mg, that particular element, has attained noble gas configuration. That is why the third ionization energy is very, 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 very high compared to the other two. The guys understood? How will you determine how many number of valence electrons are there? Looking at the data of the ionization energy values, right? Everybody understood?
Yes, sir.
Okay. What about others? Everybody understood?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Fine. Okay. I believe you. Hope everybody understood. Right. Okay. So that's about ionization energy. So we'll speak about a little more trends in the next class. Fine then. Thank you. We'll meet again. Bye bye.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Thank you.